Welcome to the Test Guild Automation Podcast, where we all get together to learn more about automation and software testing with your host, Joe Colantonio.
Hey, it's Joe, and welcome to another episode of the Test Guild Automation Podcast. Really excited about today's podcast because we're going to be talking with Shannon Lee all about using AI in mobile automation testing and all other types of automation topics. Shannon Lee is an Atlanta, Georgia native working as a developer evangelist for Kobiton to help bring the good word of innovative technology to the world. So really excited to have her. Shannon, if you don't know, is an avid learner who enjoys challenging herself and learning new trends in software development, especially test automation and applied data science. So she really knows about AI, she really knows about automation, and she knows about development. So we got the best of everything. Given her positive and collaborative personality, if you know her, Shannon really enjoys engaging with like-minded individuals with goals of inspiring and encouraging others, especially women in technology, which we need more of. So thank you, Shannon, for being a great example, as well as learning from brilliant minds within the DevOps community. Really excited to have Shannon on the show with us today. You don't want to miss this episode. Check it out.
Please enter access code.
Hi, my name is Anna Domaskan, and I'm a technical consultant with Keysight Technologies. In my daily job, I help customers set up their test automation efforts, beginning from the initial designs up until the releases to support the monthly or weekly testing cycles. In my talk about accounting for requirements, engineering, and test automation, I would like to discuss what are the requirements and why do they have to be engineered? How do they relate to test automation, and how can you work on improving the process? So please do join me at Automation Guild 2022, February 7th to 11th. I'm looking forward to seeing you.
The Test Guild Automation Podcast is sponsored by the fantastic folks at Sauce Labs, the cloud-based test platform that helps ensure you can develop with confidence at every step from code to deployment for every framework, browser, OS, mobile device, and API. Get a free trial. Visit testguild.com/Sauce Labs and click on the exclusive sponsors section to try it for free today. Check it out. Hey, Shannon, welcome to the Guild.
Hey, Joe.
Awesome. No, great to have you. It's been, I met you earlier on a earlier demo of Kobiton, so really excited to have you on the show to talk more about AI and automation, your views on development as well. So Shannon, before we get into those, anything I missed in your bio that you want the Guild to know more about?
No, I think that was pretty spot on. So yeah, again, really just love talking tech and really excited to be here with you and doing just that. So thank you again for having me.
Awesome. So you are a hardcore developer. So I'm just curious, I'm already off script. What got you into automation testing?
So my career started in testing. So I was a manual tester first, working through software development. And one thing that really kind of engaged me is the ability to automate your manual test cases. I thought that was something really cool and was really fun to watch and kind of dive into also kind of, seeing your development and kind of kicking it off and seeing it happen in real time. So it was a lot of fun. So it really, really got my interest. Something about automation, though, is that it has its drawbacks, so to speak. So really excited to speak with you today about some of the tools and solutions that we have that can kind of help combat those drawbacks so that you can really make use of all your time in your automation efforts with that. So.
Great. Yeah, so I love it. You have real world experience, so you know
Yes.
what people are struggling with and different techniques and tools we can probably use to get around it. Mm-hmm. Nice. So, a lot of people I speak with, they're very familiar with web browser automation. Mobile application automation has been around for a while, but still I see teams struggling with it. So I guess before we get into it, how do you define what is mobile application automation?
Sure. So first of all, mobile application automation is difficult to achieve. And there's a couple of different reasons why that is. With mobile app automation, you really have to take into consideration the different platforms that are in play that kind of set the tone for how their applications are developed and how you kind of have to follow, so to speak, their rules of the road, if that makes sense. So if you look at iOS applications, you have to develop that in Swift and Objective-C. So that itself is already different from typical development. And then you'll see automation kind of extend from that and why it makes it so hard is, again, because these platforms are kind of doing their thing, doing what's best for them. But with that comes a slew of tools that are a little bit, sometimes don't quite hit the mark. Or, what we hear is that device fragmentation it can play a very real role in why mobile app automation is so difficult to achieve.
Nice. So I think a lot of times where automation engineers get themselves in trouble is they try to test against all the things and all the devices
So
and
much.
everything.
There's so much.
Yeah. So is there a way to know, like, all right, here's my risk areas, and this is what I should be focusing on, especially with the mobile automation? It may be different than browser things I should be concerned about.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's going to be more of your application, how your application works and flows. And so we have far different applications out there. You have e-commerce applications, you have gaming applications, so playing even just mobile games on your phone. So each application is going to be different in its own way, and that's going to need to warrant its own automation to work with that as well. And so that's something else that we're seeing different from web-based automation. So I feel like web-based automation, it's so easy. When the web was created, everyone, all the pioneers were working together. They were kind of setting the tone for, oh, we'll use this, and everything was kind of all within the same, right? And so automation following that came easier because you didn't have these, say, hybrid applications or the different types of applications. You just had one web-based application, easy peasy. Now, if you were to try to translate onto a mobile application, it gets far more complex with that.
Yeah, that's a good point. A lot of times people complain about browsers saying, well, they don't follow standards, but compared to iOS versus Android, if you're doing scripting, is like night and day. So I don't even think it's like that. So I guess that's the first debate when people think about automation is, what do they choose? They choose native tooling, or do they choose a higher level tooling like Appium? What are your thoughts on it?
Right. So it's really going to come down to what works best for your needs. And so kind of to go back to answering your question right before. So you're going to understand your needs. You're going to understand your application. You're going to understand some critical components of your application and how that might be working on, say, an iOS device, on an Android device, things of that nature. And so with knowing that and kind of setting yourself up and understanding the automation that's needed to get done, which would you go for? Are you going to go for a native application framework? So we have XUI tests that can automate iOS applications. Or are you going to go another native framework if you have specifically only Android applications? Are you going to go Espresso or UI Automator? So one thing that I find, and those are going to be faster frameworks because they're kind of working right within the system itself. So an iOS system and an Android system. So they'll be fast. They will be reliable. They might not be, I think one of the biggest things with mobile applications though is that just regardless, they can be flaky and really hard to maintain. Flaky being brittle and running in automation and it just failing before it even gets a chance to kick off. So you have these frameworks in place, these native application frameworks that are fantastic. Again, XUI test and Espresso. So if you have a iOS native only app, then go for XUI test. That'd be perfect for you. If you have a native Android app, then go for Espresso. That'd be a great option for you as well. But that's not so ideal, right? You want to have your application be able to run on all platforms, on iOS and Android, because that will essentially make your audience far larger. You're not just secluded to one platform or the other. And so that's where we have Selenium coming into play, which I have huge respect for Selenium. I think they really helped pioneer automation from a web-based perspective. And then they even saw themselves this issue that was happening with device fragmentation. And so they said, you know what? It shouldn't have to be this way. Let's make one more framework. It's going to be a hybrid framework. So what we'll do is we'll make it a simple HTTP server that will kind of envelop these native frameworks. So again, XUI test and UI Automator. That way, boom, now you have one script to run on both Android and iOS applications. The caveat to that is that when you have that additional step in place, by enveloping those native frameworks, now we're finding that Appium is far slower than those native frameworks. And the name of the game, name of automation, speed is important. It's very important. You want to make sure that your tests are running. You want to make sure running at a decent speed, making sure that they complete in a timely manner. So we actually at Kobiton, we even have a few customers who refuse to use Appium just because of how slow it is, kind of thing. So there are great frameworks out there for everyone to use, and it's really going to come down to what works best for you individually. And then there's pros and cons to both of them, right? So again, that device fragmentation, native frameworks are so much faster, more reliable, but you're stuck to just one platform. And then here we have Appium combating that device fragmentation, but at the cost of speed, essentially. So it's just a little bit slower. So
there's a lot there. So I want to pull out a few things. No, that's great. I just want to tease out a few things you mentioned. I think you mentioned about flaky automation.
Yes.
I know, I'll be honest, I did automation for over 25 years. I don't think I ever really did much mobile automation. It's all browser-based. So I know with browser, the things that make it flaky is usually timing issues on the network or bad locators or timing strategies. It's usually not the tool. It's usually either of those two issues. So what's it with mobile? Is it the same? Is it different? Are there different issues that would cause a mobile test to be flaky or less reliable?
It's more or less the same, depending on your network response and the tools for mobile applications. They're not as well, I wouldn't say well developed. They're not as developed as web-based automation tooling, if that makes sense. You have far more time between web application development and then the tools that arose for automating that, and then the time it takes to really develop those tools specific to any hindrance or any issues going on from web-based application. When we look at mobile application automation, those that flakiness that you just mentioned for web-based, they still exist for mobile applications. And I think the biggest culprit is, as you mentioned, just the technical identifiers, flaky, however you're trying to interact with that element. Even Appium Inspector has a big old warning sign that says, we don't recommend using XPaths kind of thing, but XPaths is the only thing that you can use between two platforms unless you try to add your own unique IDs, which a lot of times that will fall on the developer to put those in. But a lot of people don't have that resource to do that. And that just puts more time on the developer's hands. So a lot of people are kind of, I wouldn't say at a loss, but are subjected to using XPaths, and XPaths in themselves are flaky and brittle and not the most ideal to work with, but sometimes that's the only thing you can kind of work with. And the tooling within mobile application automation hasn't had that same amount of time to really develop compared to web application automation, if that makes sense. So we're kind of still seeing it, the automation is in its infancy, if you will, as far as what tools and frameworks can allow to kind of combat that flakiness and be able to maintain your scripts.
Absolutely. So I know a lot of companies, or not a lot of companies, a lot of frameworks are coming out now to try to combat a lot of those issues you mentioned. The way they do it is codeless, with some sort of AI machine learning behind it that's able to say, okay, this locator is not available. Let's use an image, or let's use an accessibility identifier. So there's a lot there, but I guess the first part is a big buzzword is codeless. So You've tried both. Are there advantages, disadvantages of a script-based automation compared to codeless?
Right. So this is where you really see artificial intelligence come into play, and it is super exciting. So when you think about, just to get a little background, when you think about the tech trends, say 5-7 years ago, what was the big thing? It was the cloud. Everyone wanted to make it to the cloud, right? So now the new tech trend that we're currently seeing ourselves in is commercializing artificial intelligence, really bringing that into all areas of technology and business and things of that nature. So we're seeing that brought into even the, as you mentioned, in the testing and the automation world. So we have codeless, scriptless, no code, however you want to phrase it, automation that is being driven by artificial intelligence, which I think is really, really cool. There are some drawbacks to that. A lot of times some tools might sell you on codeless, and I put it, you can't see in a podcast, but putting in quotation marks, codeless, no code, where it's not true AI. It's more of kind of just stringing together, what would they call it, drag and drop, and kind of stringing test steps together to create a test case. But that in itself can be very, again, not true artificial intelligence. And so it can be very inconsistent. But when you do have a very consistent framework in place. So I'll use Kobiton as an example. We do offer scriptless automation, and it's true scriptless. It's true artificial intelligence driven, just based on machine learning algorithms. I believe we have a TensorFlow algorithm in there that really learns your application, and not only learning your application, but learns your movements within that application. And so it's a little bit more robust in that sense of a true scriptless framework. And again, the draw side that I'm trying to get at, and I keep getting sidetracked, is that you are at the expense of the AI driver, right? You don't have any control over that. All you really are doing is providing a manual session. So you're providing a manual test case, if you will. And of course, it will save that, store it, learn from it. What is machine learning but just learning off iterations? So every time you use that test case over and over and over again, the AI will actually become smarter in knowing your application. And there's a lot of great aspects to that. But again, you're at the expense of the AI itself. And scriptless kind of comes from a more top layer down scene. So you don't get as much testing coverage with scriptless automation. You're really coming from the UI, from the top down. You might be able to kind of dig into some API testing or database testing or end-to-end testing, but not as comprehensible as if you were to script that out. So, in script-based automation, you can really dig into it. You can really get into that granular control of what it is you're trying to automate. Scriptless will save you a ton of time because it's no code, right? But again, you're at that limitation of coming from the UI down and kind of being at the expense of the artificial intelligence itself. So you'll kind of lose a little bit of that control. So again, some pros and cons there as well, as far as when it comes to scriptless automation.
Nice. So I guess for the folks that don't know about Cobaton, I hear Cobaton for some reason, I think Catalan Studio, but I don't know why.
It's our parent company. That makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yay. So it makes sense. That's a rarity. I lost my track of thought. So my question is then, how does Cobiton enter the picture then? What do you all do? Do you add a layer on top of Appium that adds AI, or do you inject AI based on if someone runs on your infrastructure? How does it all work?
Yeah, so we actually have, Nova is our artificial intelligence engine. So we call it Nova. Nova actually sits under, kind of in the between the device itself and the application. So it's kind of sitting underneath the application itself, and it's really just watching. It's just watching, capturing a lot of metadata from your manual session. And again, really being able to learn your application and learn your interactions with your application. So that's kind of how our AI engine is working at the moment. Kobiton's main tenet really is to go faster, go forward, and go flexible. So with our go faster, we actually have our own. So if you want to do scriptless, which is great, our Nova does capture the XPath associated with every element that you touch. So even though it's a scriptless test case, you're able to compile an entire, not compile, Nova, it will generate an Appium script for you thereafter. So not only did you ran a manual session, and now you have scriptless, and you can kick that off on any one of the 400 devices we have in our public cloud. Again, to really combat that device fragmentation, make sure your application looks great on every platform. And then with our scriptless solution, you can then use that same scriptless test case. It will generate an Appium script, a full Appium script for you, of all the interactions that you performed within that manual session. And so, boom, you have an Appium script now that you can run again on any device, or set it up within your own framework or your own test suites or Jenkins job, or CI/CD pipeline that you're using. And now you're able to leverage your script-based automation on top of that. So we really help offer both solutions for our users. We understand that not everyone's going to enjoy scriptless. People are already coming with their Appium scripts and want to be able to use Appium, so we can support that as well. So not only are we offering an auto-generated script that you can use, we also have our own in-house Appium server called Actionable that is actually 3 times faster than Appium server. So when I mentioned the caveat earlier, just a moment ago, with Appium being so great and how it can envelop both native app frameworks, Kobiton can do it in the same, but we can do it 3 times faster, leveraging Appium scripts. So We really wanted to go faster for our users. And when it comes into our go forward play, this innovation again on itself is stemming from a really robust AI, artificial intelligence engine that's running it, that is constantly being worked on with every release to really make sure that it has the utmost confidence in failures and passes and everything, so that we can allow our users to know that they're in good hands using Kobiton.
Nice. That was one of my questions. I know how AI assists with helping tests become more reliable, but I didn't know about how it helps it get faster. And it sounds like you have technology and a grid that speeds it up as well.
Mm-hmm.
Did I hear that correctly?
You did, yes.
Nice.
Yeah, I feel like I'm. So say you're setting up your automation environment, you're using Appium, and even to start coding out a test from scratch can take you a good moment. It can take you, say, anywhere between an hour, 2 hours of, again, just laying down that preliminary test script. So using Kobiton and allowing the AI to generate that script for you. So it's kind of like that. And I don't want to get it confused with any sort of like record and playback features, or I know Appium Inspector has record, where it will record your movements and it will give you kind of like a little snippet of the Appium code that you can use. Our script is far more comprehensive. Everything's in there that you would need, including teardown and scrolling and things that are hard to automate, like scrolling, for example, is actually really hard to automate. So with this auto-generated script, you have all that right then, and it takes 5 minutes to get it together. So you're looking at 2 hours just setting up a test script versus, let's say, 10 minutes at most, having the entire test script created for you. And with the great thing with that, and we're not here to say we're getting rid of your Appium scripting. We're here to say, let us lay down that foundation for you, so you can spend more time on the important things, like drilling even deeper into that test script if you need to, so to speak. So again, it's really laying down that UI level for you, that foundation. Now you just saved yourself an hour and 50 minutes. Now you can use that hour and 50 minutes to really start drilling into that test suite or that test case, or move on to the next test case to automate, so to speak. And then whenever you're ready to run that, you can run that using Actionable, which again, 3 times faster. So if a usual testing window takes you 6 hours to run all your automation, because Appium can be a little slow, now your testing window is 2 hours of running your test suite using Kobiton's Appium server.
Great. So I know a lot of people, what they do with AI or machine learning is they also, like you said, there's you have a scriptless approach, but also it helps people that are actually scripting. So does it have any sort of intelligence while people are coding that gives them suggestions or a telesense, or is it just that it creates the template for them and then they can add on to it based on their needs by coding?
It's more the latter. So it will lay down, like I said, not so much as you're scripting it out, but it will provide you, again, that foundation to start off of, and then proceed with your additional scripting, however you see fit, whatever is needed in that test case, whatever requirements you're trying to make sure you're hitting and passing.
Nice. So if someone has existing Appium test and they want to go to, say, a vendor that has this AI technology like Kobiton, does that work, or do they have to start from scratch?
So it comes from both ways. So if you're wanting to do an automated script generator, that would come from a manual session. So that's going to come from a manual session, and then it will be converted. We do support bringing your own, coming to the table with your own Appium scripts, but that is not going to work so much. It won't work for the auto-generated script, if that makes sense. You can still run it on Kobiton devices, and our AI will still take all that, the run itself and all the metadata associated with it. It's just from a perspective of you actually coding it out versus it being auto-generated.
Perfect. So I know a lot of things other people struggle with is reporting or knowing when to what test to run based on check-ins. Does this solution do anything with CI/CD, or to help you know like what test to run if they check in code A/B that they need to run test Z and Z and 1 or something?
Sure. So we do support CI/CD tools. So we do integrate with Jenkins, and so we do allow our users to set themselves up from a continuous integration or continuous deployment perspective. We this is going to come for scriptless, so not so much script based at the moment, but we do offer what we call or soon to offer within our roadmap of this year, what we call impact analysis. So whenever you have a new push to test, or say you have a new push to test that has a new page or a new button or something within the application that is different from the scriptless test cases that you already currently have, and Nova will let you know the next push to test. Hey, looks like this test case has been impacted by this push. Might need some remediation. You may need to add in another test step here just to maintain that existing test script or scriptless test case to make sure that it's not coherent, but working alongside your applications. You're not missing anything, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Great. Cool. So I'm looking at my notes, and for some reason I've written down a two-prong approach.
Yeah.
Something about capture object, inspect, what is this?
Yeah, this is the exciting part. This is like, okay, let's talk about this. Okay, so this is what we are calling it FlexCorrect. So FlexCorrect is the first of its kind coming to the market, and this is where we're seeing artificial intelligence really help and assist script-based automation, especially when it comes to flaky test and inconsistent test. So I mentioned before that there are just not ideal ways of how you can implement technical identifiers. Like I said, they do have each platform is going to have their own, say their own find element by, or native frameworks will have their own specific locator strategies, but that doesn't, quite help when you have a hybrid application. So you can't use iOS specific locator strategies in automation when you want to automate an Android, part of the Android application, so to speak. And when you're using locator strategies like find element by, say, class name or ID, that also may be platform specific. And so that's why XPaths are kind of a sure way to make sure that it's compatible for both platforms. So you have it for iOS and for Android. But XPaths, like I mentioned before, Appium Inspector even says, hey, we recommend not using XPaths, right? They recommend using unique IDs. And unique IDs are great. And if you have that capability and that resource to implement unique IDs, that's going to definitely make sure that you have the most stable automation. But again, a lot of people don't have that resource. They don't have that relationship with the developer. The developer doesn't have the capacity to add in these unique IDs. So more times than not, you're kind of, let's say, stuck, so to speak, by using XPaths. But you know that XPaths are very flaky and brittle. So FlexCorrect, like I mentioned, is first of its kind to the market to assist in script-based automation, so that when you are running your Appium script and say it fails because element not found on page, FlexCorrect will actually prevent it from failing, and it will find the next best fit XPath for that element in question, so that and implement that, so that your tests continue running and your test didn't fail because of the very frustrating and very inconvenient element not found on page. So that's FlexCorrect. So that's the two-pronged approach, essentially. So that is where artificial intelligence comes into play by analyzing script-based automation. So it's capturing the object within your tree hierarchy of your application. And then it's also during a manual session or even just reruns of the test case on a real device. Nova, Kobaton's AI engine, can actually map elements across the screen. So if you're tapping this element on the screen, it will pin that to that within the hierarchy and capture that XPath right there. So that's the two-prong approach that you were mentioning of how FlexCorrect works in the realm of artificial intelligence assisting script-based automation. So you have one prong that is, again, capturing the object, so capturing the entire hierarchy and learning from it, analyzing it. And then the second prong of being able to map that element, pin it to the hierarchy. So when you run that test again, and say the developer added a new button, added a new dropdown, added something that would kind of knock out any of your XPaths or any of your technical identifiers, with FlexCorrect, it will correct that instance for you. And so it ensures that your tests continue running. You don't have any failed negatives, so to speak. And it really just, again, helps facilitate your testing and make sure everything just keeps running and nothing fails due to that pesky element not found on page.
So how you have the grid, how it makes it 3 times faster. Do you have any studies on how this type of technology helps your tests become X amount reliable or anything like that?
We are working through benchmarks at the moment, but we are looking at more of that confidence interval for the artificial intelligence. How confident is it that it can select the next correct XPath, and that is looking at like a 98%, 99% confidence, not interval, but just confidence in itself of being able to, again, identify the next best fit technical identifier. Kobiton did do a research study on automation and on mobile application testing, and what we found was that, first of all, just achieving automation from a mobile application perspective is a big feat in itself. So I think only about 20% of tech teams can actually achieve mobile application automation. So let's say, for example, you have your entire regression suite fully automated, and you might you kick it off, everything passes, or not passes, but nothing fails due to element not found, and you can move on. Next sprint, the developer pushed something to test, pushed a new button, a new drop down, and it kind of not disoriented, it kind of rearranged that hierarchy. And so now that XPath is no longer true XPath for the original element. We found that anytime a push to test would nearly blow out half of the tests in the regression suite, because again, just the maintenance and the flakiness is real. We found that it took about, I think, like 2 weeks to go back into every test script and correct it, and to tweak it, maintain, and to keep it going for the next regression cycle. So, that's insane. I mean, that's like a whole release cycle in itself of having to continuously tweak your scripts and make sure that they're consistently running. So we do have a research study on that, showed that it took a good while to correct those scripts. Now with FlexCorrect, you kick off your regression suite. Sure, your regression cycle time might be longer, because as your tests are running and say an element's not found and FlexCorrect's doing its thing, it does add to that testing cycle, that automation testing time, because it takes a moment to do its thing and again, find the next best fit technical identifier. But at least you don't have to completely fail your tests. Again, it'll keep your tests running. And that maintenance window goes from 2 weeks to maybe 2 days. And it's wild. We're really excited for this one.
That's awesome. I know a lot of people, Alan Page was telling me something called mean time to diagnosis, is that how long does it take you to debug your test?
Right.
If it takes you like hours, then you've lost, because your next build's already kicked off and running, so it's like a maintenance nightmare just to keep up. So this is cool. Very
Absolutely,
cool.
Yeah.
Okay, Shannon, before we go, is there one piece of actionable advice you can give to someone to help them with their automation, mobile AI testing efforts? And what's the best way to find, contact you, or learn more about Kobiton?
Sure. I think my number one advice to those, whatever scenario you're in, whatever journey you're on at the moment, my thing is to always ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. How that might look on posting on, Slack Overflow, or if that means asking one of your colleagues or coworkers, or even pinging you, Joe, be like, hey Joe, do you mind helping me look? No, I'm just kidding. But don't be afraid to ask and to really reach out to anyone to help you because we're all learning in this together, and we all want to be able to share that knowledge and information with one another. So it's really important to, if you have any sort of questions or need help with anything, feel free to ask. Feel free to really put yourself out there, ask for help. And I promise you'll get things moving. So, and you're welcome to ask me. You can find me on LinkedIn. I think my name is just Shannon Lee under Developer Evangelist for Kobiton. So you can find me there.
Thanks again for your automation awesomeness. The links to everything in value we covered in this episode, head on over to testguild.com/A385. And while you're there, make sure to click on the Try for Free Today link under the exclusive sponsor section to learn all about Sauce Lab's awesome products, and services. And if the show has helped you in any way, why not rate it and review it in iTunes? Reviews really help in the rankings of the show, and I read each and every one of them. So that's it for this episode of the Test Guild Automation Podcast. I'm Joe, and my mission is to help you succeed with creating end-to-end, full-stack automation awesomeness. As always, test everything and keep the good. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the Test Guild Automation Podcast. Head on over to testguild.com for full show notes, amazing blog articles, and online testing conferences. Don't forget to subscribe to the Guild to continue your testing journey.